A plane crashes in a horrifying way in the icy Andes Mountains. Immediately after the crash, an international search operation begins. Helicopters, military aircraft, everything is deployed to scan the mountains, but the Andes are so overwhelmingly white that the plane simply disappears into the snow. After searching for 8 days, even the officials call off the operation, believing that no one could survive in minus 40 degrees Celsius, temperatures without food. With that, the world also assumes that this chapter has come to an end. But exactly 72 days after the accident, a piece of news explodes like a bomb. 16 passengers from the crash have been found alive. People are stunned. It feels as if the dead have come back to life. But along with the shock, one question arises: how did they survive for so many days? When the secret is finally revealed, fear spreads across the world. The same people who once sympathized with them begin to hate them. So what did those 16 people eat to survive for 72 days? How did they stay alive in bone-freezing, minus 40 degrees Celsius cold? And after the plane crashed, what happened that even today people don't want to remember? This is the mysterious story of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, considered one of the darkest incidents in aviation history. On the morning of October 12, 1972, Montevideo's Carrasco Airport looks like any other routine day, except for one corner filled with extra excitement. 19 young players from the Old Christians Club rugby team, along with some friends and family members, are flying to Santiago today. The plane is a Fairchild FH-227D, a small twin-engine turboprop aircraft. In the cockpit is Colonel Ferradas, a senior Air Force pilot with over 5,000 flight hours. He is teaching the route to the co-pilot, Lagurara. Lagurara is relatively new to the Andes route, but he feels confident because a veteran pilot is sitting beside him. As the engines throttle up, a light vibration fills the cabin and the plane accelerates smoothly before lifting off. The first phase of the flight is very smooth. Everyone believes this will be a normal, enjoyable journey, but ahead, the weather over the mountains is beginning to deteriorate. The pilots can see the risk of clouds and turbulence. In fact, winds over the Andes can suddenly become unpredictable, and today feels exactly like one of those days. Seeing the poor visibility and the lack of radar, the captain decides it isn't safe to continue. He requests permission from ATC and diverts the plane to Mendoza. Soon after, the plane lands safely in Mendoza. The rugby players are disappointed, but keep their spirits up. They spend the night in Mendoza, tired, but confident that everything will be normal the next day. No one realizes that this delay will become the most important part of their lives. Because when the plane takes off again tomorrow, nothing will go the way they imagined. The next afternoon, the sky over Mendoza looks slightly clearer. The plane lines up on the runway. Engines throttle up. The cabin vibrates lightly, and seconds later, the Fairchild lifts off toward the sky. Mendoza fades behind them, and ahead lies a massive mountain range, the Andes. Extremely high, dangerous, and constantly changing mountains where flying is incredibly challenging. The weather is still in a stable to unstable zone. Clouds are scattered, winds shift from calm to completely unpredictable. The captain says, "Lagurara, maintain altitude. Mountaintops are unpredictable." La Guerrara confidently monitors the instruments and follows the southern route, the long U-shaped path designed to avoid the highest peaks. But gradually, the clouds begin to thicken. The plane enters a white blanket, where only faint fog is visible through the windows. They are now flying in instrument flight conditions, no ground visibility, relying entirely on altimeters and indicators. Around 3 p.m., the plane enters deep into the Andes. The captain constantly checks the map and stopwatch, because precise direction and distance are critical while crossing the Andes. Then comes the moment that changes this story forever. At 3:21 p.m., La Guerrara radios ATC, "We have crossed Curacao, requesting clearance to turn north and descend." Without radar coverage in Chilean airspace, ATC places blind trust in the report. ATC responds, "Cleared to descend to 11,500 feet. But reality is very different. The plane has not reached Curacao at all. It is still 60 to 70 kilometers deep inside the mountains, with no visual reference. The pilots believe they've crossed the range and begin descending. As the descent starts, the plane is violently shaken by turbulence. Suddenly, a massive dark mountain peak pierces through the clouds. So close it feels within arm's reach. Panic erupts in the cockpit. The captain yanks the joystick back, and the plane enters a steep climb. Engines roar at full power. Inside the cabin, passengers grab onto each other. For a brief moment, it seems like the plane might clear the peak. An even larger mountain rises ahead, and the ground proximity warning blares loudly. The plane is climbing steeply, its nose almost pointing straight up, but the mountains still stand like a deadly wall. Before anyone can react, the tail section slams into rock with a deafening impact. The collision is so violent that the rear cabin literally tears off and explodes into the air. Passengers seated in the back are thrown directly into the open sky. Inside the cabin, oxygen feels like it's being sucked out. People are screaming, and everything spirals out of control. Moments later, the plane tilts violently to the right. And the right wing strikes another rock outcrop and rips away completely. The aircraft is now a broken cylinder, with no tail and only one wing left. The captain desperately fights for control, but then the left wing hits the mountainside and is torn off as well. Now the plane has nothing left to generate lift. The fuselage spins downward like a thin, shaking tube. Inside, passengers crash into one another. Below lies a long glacier slope, a deadly white slide. The nose points straight down, and the next second, the plane slams into the snow. Like a giant bobsled, it skids across the ice at over 300 kilometers per hour. For nearly 700 meters, the fuselage slides uncontrollably. Finally, a massive snowbank stops the motion, and the horrific crash comes to an end. Meanwhile, at Santiago Airport, no one knows anything yet. Flight 571 was supposed to land by 3:30 p.m, but there is still no sign of it. At first, authorities assume a routine delay, but as 5 p.m. passes, tension rises sharply. Phones begin ringing. Family members, panicked, ask where the flight is and who they can talk to. No one has answers. Eventually, emergency alerts are issued in both Chile and Uruguay, and by late evening, a full search operation is officially launched. military helicopters, rescue aircraft, and fixed-wing planes are sent toward the Andes. Officers analyzed the last radio message, in which the first officer said, "We have crossed Curacao," and this very message would later prove to be the biggest mistake. At daybreak, the first search convoy takes off from the airbase. Helicopters fly deep between the mountain walls, and aircraft scan vast areas from above. But the terrain of the Andes is extremely dangerous. Thick layers of snow and an endless white monotone where anything can easily blend in. Many times planes fly right over the very slopes where the broken fuselage lies, but the wreckage looks so white that it seems like just another part of the snow. 2 days pass, 3 days, the 4th day. Nothing is spotted. The weather keeps getting worse. The 6th day, then the 7th day, search teams begin to feel, deep down, that perhaps the crash was so violent that no one could have survived. On the evening of the 8th day, radio channels announce a heartbreaking headline. The search for Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 has officially been called off. No survivors are expected. Family members break down in tears. People protest, pleading, "Please search for one more day." But the authorities' decision is final. They say there is no benefit in continuing the search. Days pass, and the world slowly begins to forget this flight, treating it like just another tragic story. More than 2 months, nearly 70 days, have passed since the Andes crash. The world has forgotten Flight 571. News channels barely mention it anymore. Everyone believes that chapter is closed. But on the morning of December 21st, sudden news shakes South America. News that seems impossible. A radio message comes from a remote mountain region in Chile. 2 survivors from the Andes plane crash have been found alive. At first, everyone thinks it must be a false report. But when local officials confirm that the message is completely genuine, the entire world is stunned. Over the next 2 days, a total of 16 people are rescued. No one can believe it. 72 days, below zero temperatures, no food, no shelter, and yet people survived. How is this possible? I'm sure the same question is in your mind. But to understand that, we must go back 72 days to the exact moment when the plane crashed. Ratus after the crash, the fuselage lies completely still. For a moment it feels like everything is over. Then suddenly, a muffled groan is heard from inside. Someone trapped beneath the seats tries to whisper, "Help! Help!" Someone else screams in pain, clutching a broken leg. The inside of the fuselage is completely tilted. Seats are piled on top of each other, and the air is so cold that every breath stabs the chest. The rugby players, still filled with adrenaline, immediately begin helping each other. Someone pulls a friend out from under the luggage, and amid this chaos, the most shocking sight appears. In the cockpit, Captain Ferradas has died instantly after slamming into the forward panel. Nearby, co-pilot Lagarara lies unconscious, breathing faintly, but no one knows for how long. The rear of the fuselage is completely open, allowing icy winds to rush in, turning the cabin colder than a refrigerator. The survivors try to block the hole using seat cushions and jackets, but the wind is so strong that even luggage is being blown around. Finally, they stack suitcases, metal plates, and torn seats together to form a temporary wall, which manages to block much of the wind. The next concern is water. They realize snow can be melted for drinking water, but melting snow is not easy. They place broken metal sheets in the sunlight, slowly melting just enough snow so that each person can take a single sip. But after thirst is quenched, hunger slowly begins to take over. When they check the luggage, they find a few small pieces of chocolate, 1 or 2 bottles of wine, some candies, and a small jar of jam. The first night is the most painful. They sleep close together, sharing body heat. During the night, those who are more severely injured slowly die. By morning, the cabin is even colder, and the dead bodies have become completely stiff. The survivors sit in a line, exhaustion and fear clearly visible on their faces. Only one question runs through everyone's mind. When will rescue come? Will anyone even reach this place? They don't know that the search teams are looking in the wrong direction. Days pass one by one. The number of dead increases every day, but no help arrives. Those still alive grow weaker with each passing day. They manage to melt snow for water, but food is completely gone. Still, there is hope that help will come. But then, on October 22nd, the 8th day after the crash, they hear a news broadcast on the radio. The search for Flight 571 has officially been closed. No survivors are expected. That sentence hits the cabin like a bomb. Tears stream from everyone's eyes. Their last hope is gone. Without food, their condition worsens to the point where death from starvation seems inevitable, as they struggle with the question of hunger, one that no one wants to speak aloud, but one that has crossed everyone's mind. Bodies lying outside in the snow, teammates' bodies, preserved by the freezing cold. At first, everyone tries to push the thought away. Impossible. This is a sin. We can't do this. This is inhuman. The rugby players sit in a circle. Someone says quietly, "We'll all die if we don't eat something." Another says, "I'm thinking of my mother. She would want me to live. And if I died, I'd want my body to save someone else's life." Then another voice speaks. "We're like one family. If we don't do this, who will? The bodies are here. They would have wanted us to survive." Slowly, a common understanding forms, but the next step is the hardest. No one wants to make the first cut. Everyone wants someone else to do it. Finally, Roberto Canessa, a medical student, picks up a piece of broken windshield glass. His hands are trembling, tears fill his eyes, his face turns pale. He steps outside, sits beside a frozen body, and whispers, "I'm sorry, we all have to live." He makes the first cut, just a microscopic strip, no bigger than a matchstick. Twice he stops before bringing it to his mouth, then closes his eyes and swallows. Inside the cabin, everyone is completely silent. After the food problem is solved, about 16 to 17 days pass in the middle of the snow. The survivors begin to feel a little energy returning because they now have a difficult, painful, but real source of food. They seem more stable now, still weak, but able to stand, walk outside, and even make small plans. But the Andes Mountains do not allow anyone to escape easily. One night, as everyone tries to sleep close together inside the fuselage, the weather outside suddenly changes rapidly. At first, they think it's just the wind. Then suddenly, a massive white wall crashes down toward the fuselage. Snow rushes into the cabin at storm speed. Within seconds, 8 people are crushed to death. The remaining survivors are trapped under the combined weight of their own bodies and the snow, unable to move even a hand. Then Nando Parrado speaks in a faint voice. "Make an air passage, or we'll all die." Some begin pushing upward with their hands, elbows and heads. Fingers go numb, but finally a small air gap forms, just enough for 1 or 2 people to take deep breaths one at a time. They remain trapped under the snow for 3 days. Fresh bodies lie with them in this frozen coffin. Finally, on the 3rd day, when the snow loosens slightly, the survivors push one another and slowly dig a tunnel upward and manage to escape the plane. Their bodies are weaker, the air is thin, and food, the dead bodies, is limited. Nando says, "If we sit here and wait, we'll all die. We have to go out. We have to cross the mountains." At first, everyone thinks this is impossible, and beyond that, there are thousands of kilometers of nothing but snow and mountains. But Nando's mind is crystal clear. Chile is on the other side. If we can cross those mountains just once and reach a valley, we'll find life. There is no other option. So everyone agrees. Now, for this mission, they need one critical thing: a sleeping bag. They create one by sewing together seat covers, foam cushions, plastic sheets, and torn jackets into a makeshift solution. The next morning, the expedition begins. The team consists of Nando Parrado, Roberto Canessa, and Artis Vizintin. Everyone wishes them good luck, but deep down, no one has much hope. The three slowly begin climbing the mountain wall, step by step. For 3 days, they do nothing but climb. Exhausted, Canessa says, "We thought it was just one mountain. There are thousands." Finally, they realize that their food supply is running low and they won't reach their destination together. At that moment, Vizintin makes a huge decision to save the other two. "I'm going back. You both go on." After some argument, they agree that for everyone to survive, Vizintin returning is the best option. Now only two remain, Parrado and Canessa. Then one morning, as they cross a ridge, they see a sight that fills their eyes with tears. Greenery. Below, across a river in the valley, they see cattle, and near them, a Chilean man. Nando and Canessa fall to their knees. From a distance, they shout at the top of their lungs, "Help! Help! Plane crash! Andes!" The man is a muleteer named Sergio Catalan, travelling his usual mountain route with his mules. When he hears the shouting and turns around, he sees two human figures across the river in the distant mountains, clothes torn, bodies extremely weak. Nando and Canessa try to shout again, but the river between them is so loud that their voices can't reach him. Confused, Catalan signals with his hand, meaning, "I'll come back tomorrow." Nando and Canessa feel desperate, but now they have no choice except to wait. They know that even the next day they may not be able to explain anything verbally, so they prepare a note in advance. The next morning, Catalan returns. This time, the survivors fold the message inside a stone and throw it across. Catalan picks up the stone and opens the paper. It reads, "I come from a plane that crashed in the mountains. I am from Uruguay. We have been walking for 10 days. There are 14 more people alive with us. We need help, please." Catalan's heart stops for a moment. He immediately mounts his mule and rushes toward the nearest police outpost. At first, the police are skeptical, but as soon as Catalan shows them the paper, a senior officer quietly says, "We need helicopters. Now." The very next morning, helicopters cut through fog and clouds into the Andes and finally spot a broken white fuselage. From there, 14 extremely weak, skeletal survivors run out. The entire scene feels like a miracle. By December 23rd, all 16 people are rescued. The day after the rescue, every TV channel in South America runs the same headline: 16 survivors found alive after 72 days. Outside hospitals, crowds of reporters gather, people arrive with flowers, families cry and embrace their loved ones. The media and doctors repeatedly ask the survivors how they survived for so long, what they ate, and where they found food. At first, the survivors don't reveal the full truth. They know that if the real story comes out suddenly, people might react instead of trying to understand. But as rescue teams reach the crash site, the condition in which the bodies are found slowly becomes public. Eventually, after returning to Montevideo, the survivors decide that no half-truths remain. They must tell the complete story themselves. A press conference is held in a college hall. Calmly, they explain what they endured during those 72 days in the frozen valley. How, between cold, hunger, and fading hope, they were forced to make a decision that no one could imagine in normal life. They clearly state that when all food was gone and they heard on the radio that the search had been called off, they began eating from the bodies of their deceased friends so that others could live. As soon as this is revealed, a media storm erupts. Overnight, headlines shift from miracle survivors to cannibal survivors. Some people feel disgust, some feel sympathy. Others are left in shock. Debates erupt. Was this right or wrong? Can a human really do this in such conditions? Is it justified for survival? But as the survivors explain their side, the world's perspective slowly begins to change. Nando calmly says, "We had only two options. For us, those bodies didn't represent death. They became our life." Canessa adds, "They were our friends, and because of them, we are alive today." Even today, so many years later, this story is not just about a plane crash. It is a story of human courage, friendship, sacrifice, faith, and impossible survival. And in the end, only one question remains. If you were there, what would you have done?